Welcome to Octane Addicts TV. I'm Matt the camera guy, and today we're going to look at some of the archive footage all the way back from 2020, where I did an interview with Poplar, North Carolina's own Brad Teague.
I don't know how many years it's going on now, about 10 years. You know, they said they was going to have a car show at old Poplar Schoolhouse, and it's going to be called Carolina Push Rods. You know, we kind of thought they'd be 75 cars there. Well, there's wound up being quite a few cars there, and it turned out really good. Well, the next year there's about twice as many cars. The way they promoted it and the way they done, and the atmosphere over there in that field, and it wasn't in a paved parking lot, and it was out in the country drive. It just turned out awesome, and I wanted to kind of talk for them and promote the place and bring as many people as I could over there, and it's kind of how I got involved in it. Took my race car over there a few times, but well, I've always wanted to race since I can remember. I loved stock car racing. And then when I got out of school, I started drag racing. I drag raced for 3 years. And then I run into a boy one day that said, "Brett, let's build us a race car." And I said, "What kind?" He said, "A stock car." I said, "Well, what kind of car are you talking about?" And he said, "Well, we'll have to do a 6-cylinder class because of the expense." So and then the next thing was said, "Well, who's going to drive it?" And he said, "Well, you can drive it 1 week and I can drive it the next." I said, "Well, how we figure it out?" He said, "Well, let's flip a coin." So we flipped a coin, and he won. That was in the stock car stuff. But I drag raced from a time I was roughly 18 to 21. When I was 21 is when we built it was a dirt car, amateur. The boy that flipped a coin with me, he won the first race, and he did run pretty good and didn't wreck. So I drove the next race and run really good. Got in a wreck. It wasn't my fault the first race, but after that, some friends of mine, they asked me. They saw I run good, and they said, "If we build a car, would you drive it?" And so I said, "Yeah." And so they built a car, and I won the 6-cylinder championship points the first year I run, and I won a race or two. From there on, I got just people said, they'd come up to me and, "Will you drive my car, Brad?" So that's how I come up through the ranks and started traveling around to the bigger tracks. And the first super speedway I run on was Atlanta, and I finished third the first race I run in on a super speedway. Boy out of Georgia by the name of Billy McGinnis, he won the race. The next race I went to was Atlanta. It was an invitational race. The top 5 point winners at 10 different racetracks, like Hickory, North Carolina, Pulaski, Virginia, Kingsport, Coburn, Virginia. Everyone who finished in the top 5 in the points was invited to that race at Atlanta, and they done it 2 years in a row. First one, Billy McGinnis, and I finished third in it. That was my first super speedway race, and everybody had to take their short track car that they was running around on the short tracks. The next race, Neil Bonnet won it. I finished 5th in that race, so that's kind of how I got started, and just kept coming up through the ranks and won a lot of races in my lifetime until it got so expensive to where all this high dollar money started coming in. Then that kind of clips your wings, as far as I kept driving people's cars that wasn't as good as they couldn't win because you didn't have enough money to win. You got to have a lot of money to win. After about, I've raced for 51 years, and after about 30 years is when you had to getting less expensive cars. That's how my race stuff went. I won a Busch Grand National race at Martinsville, Virginia. They give a grandfather clock to the winner, and I've got a grandfather clock. And I run for the national championship in '81, and it was called Late Model Sportsman. The Busch Grand National, or Xfinity Series now, it was called Late Model Sportsman back then. And the big races you run in was called national championship races. And I finished second in national points in '81. I did good for what I had, money I had behind me. That's about how my racing went.
And just to bring you up to speed, Mike Green and Brad Teague were building this car to go to this 3-pedal event in Wilkesboro, North Carolina. A long story short, that car ended up being on Boogie Tech, where Chris Dunn ended up doing the front end, and we'll pick it back up right here.
Showing him the car, what the car does, what does what inside the car. The brave factor, he's already got that. I mean, he ain't gonna get in the car and be doing this trim. I know that. I mean, and it'd be pretty limited who I would even let do that.
Mike, I know him. Of course, I know all of them. They kind of wanted me to do something like that, and of course, it'll be different because the cars are different now. I drag raced for 3 years, not accounting on the street before I ever got. I started drag racing on the street, driving people's cars when I was 14. Wrecked one of them and tore it all to pieces. I actually wrecked 2 of them and tore them all to pieces. 257 Chevrolets, and it's kind of funny. Both of them was yellow with a white top, and a total both of them. Of course, I totaled a lot of 57s on the racetrack. It was one of my first cars that I drove on the racetrack. But
you know, when I show him the trans brake and some of the stuff and the line lock and all that, I think we'll go on Thursday, and I'm gonna let him test it a little bit and let him get a hold of it, because little car, it'll run. It runs good. It's a good fresh motor in that car.
I ran several racetracks when I started drag racing. I run a 57 Plymouth, had a Corvair and a 66 Chevy too, and done pretty good for what I had. Won a little bit of money and some trophies, and but it'll be different. I'll have to make a couple of runs to see how I can do. But I love drag racing. I normally go to the drag races at Bristol quite a bit, and any kind of racing I like.
He'll like it. He will. I know he's an old round tracker. It don't leave you. It don't get out of your system. It don't matter how old you are. That stuff don't leave.
I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with Brad Teague and Mike Green. More on them to come in the following weeks. Also, an update. They ended up making the test with the Comet, and mechanical failure got them, and they never got to run at Wilkesboro. And another side note, that sadly would be the last event of the 3-pedal gasser series. That was such a great series. I miss those days. Guys, stay tuned. Thank you. We love you. We'll see you next week.